Hi, Patrick here, and welcome back to Dollar Theater. Dollar Theater is an ongoing series created by our good friend Hobbs Horror, and we watch and review movies and TV shows that we have gotten for $1.25 or less. So this week is going to be part two of our three-part review, a slight deep dive of Land of the Lost. That's right. Land of the Lost, as you saw, the first in the series. It ran for 3 seasons. This is season number two. Whereas the first season was very heavily in the 17 episodes. There was a huge Star Trek influence in there, and many well-known science fiction authors wrote stories for the series. And so while season two only ran 13 episodes, and it didn't have quite the punch as the first season goes in terms of writing. There were still some pretty memorable episodes on this season. It still retained that same seriousness and as the first season. There was a couple more comedy seasons or comedy episodes that were based around Chaka, but overall, it still maintained its tone. It still maintained its tone. It was a well thought. It was a well thought out story premise. The actors who gave it their all. I mean, they didn't take it as a kids show, with really cheap sets or anything like that. The acting was earnest and sincere, and they tried, and to a great deal, a degree, they succeeded in making Land of the Lost super strong. All right, so like I said, this season only had 13 episodes, but there were some corkers here. Um, by this time, and they introduced the season started out the same time. Season two started out on September 6th, 1975. And they were still introducing Wesley as Wesley. By that time, he was becoming a teen idol. He was also doing Days of Our Lives at the same time that he was filming Land of the Lost. Uh, so the first episode does start out with a lot lighter tone. It features a character that we saw in the first season, and that's when they had a baby brontosaurus named Dopey, and they were using Dopey as sort of like a cow or an oxen to help pull their cart. Well, Dopey gets stuck in a tar pit, and so the episode is they're gonna try to get Dopey out before he dies. And yeah, I mean, we all know about the tar pits, and the dinosaurs didn't have a they weren't really they weren't really compatible with each other. So that started off the second season. Um, so didn't have quite the first punch, but it's all right because it starts getting better. The second episode, we start seeing more characters being slowly introduced into the series. And remember, this you can get to the Land of the Lost from anywhere, any universe, any world. There was no set rule as far as who got into the Land of the Lost. If you got caught in a time portal, whatever planet you were on, you were coming to the Land of the Lost. And that's how we met the Zarn. Will and Rick are going out there investigating. They're investigating different parts of the land, trying to map it out so they can see how big it is, how many pylons there are, what kind of foods there are, what other dangers there may be out there, locating fresh water, seeing if there's other, had the Sleestak got over there yet. So they were investigating the Mist Marsh, and they run across the Zarn. And the Zarn was an interesting character. Um, he was an alien who lived off of, he was an empath, and his mood and his well-being was affected by feelings. um, if you felt sorry or you're in pain or sad, you would cause him a great deal of pain and sadness yourself. Also, if you were mad and angry, that also worked too. The Zarn is a very advanced race as well, and the Zarn actually came into the land of the lost not by himself, but his spacecraft. There's a spacecraft came and it crashed, and so what he's trying to do is he's trying to fix his spacecraft so he can go back home. The first time we meet him, he is an antagonist. He's not a very nice person, and Will and Rick have to outfox him in this episode. Um, so we start seeing a little more of the supporting characters, like the Pakuni, the Chaka, starting to show up in every episode. Philip Paley played Chaka, and so we start seeing that again in third episode, and we start seeing the return of probably my favorite character in the series, which is Enoch. And Rick he tumbles into a pig trap with three Sleestack. The Sleestack, and they're all hunting for pig. So Will and Holly have to have Enoch and Ta, one of the Bakuni, to help. Except for one thing, the Bakuni and pigs they know each other as enemies, so that the Bakani are not exactly fond of pigs, nor the pigs of the Bakani. And of course, Enoch is helping too, but of course, he's doing his own thing, and he's not necessarily. And we start seeing this throughout the episode, throughout the season, that Enoch is not at a drop of a hat rescuer. You know, he's doing his own thing, and he's a little bit frustrated because he's there, he can't get out because of the marshals. He's stuck. Um, so he's not exactly rolling over like he was in some of the first season's episodes. He's a little bit more frustrated and just a tad bit hostile with the marshals. But he does come in and he does help rescue Rick. Um, Other things happen where Chaka he has to go through a rite of passage, and marshals help him out. It's an episode, like a lighter episode. Um, and we see the Zarn again. The Zarn comes back into play later on in episode 6. They have to figure out how to stop him because he is he's trying to fix his spaceship, and in doing so, he's causing massive gravity waves to hit the land, and it could cause everybody to be destroyed. So they have to get the Zarn to stop doing that and figure out a different way to repair his craft. And we see more science fiction in here. The pylons, we find out further more about the pylons, which are huge. They're huge. They're in the ground and in the sky. If you go inside of a pylon, each one's run by a box of crystals. And you have to be careful of these crystals. You just can't grab them. They have different purposes and different reactions. In the first season, we found out the crystals could be used as defense. They could be used as light, but they could also be misused. Or if you don't know what you're doing, you could almost die from them. If you touch the wrong crystals together, you could get electrocuted. That's what happened to Rick early in the first season. So we see a little bit more of the science behind the pylons, and we see how they control the sun and the moon, and they control the sun, and they control the 3 moons that rise up. That gives the land of the lost a daily calendar, so to speak. When you start thinking about it too, you start thinking that this is almost like you almost feel like this is a cage, a menagerie, where people are being watched from the outside, not physically watched, like in the land itself, but maybe on a starship or two, or a headquarters, that they're sitting there and watching them, how they react to different things. How let's throw this at them and see how they react to it. You got an idea as the second season went on that there's somebody out there other than what we're seeing that's overlooking the land of the lost. One episode that was really sort of spooky was the one called the Pylon Express. Now that one was a strong one because it showed a hole in the ground, and inside was an engine, and it was trapping. It was trapping dinosaurs. It trapped Holly. It trapped Chaka. It was a very spooky episode. It had captured a brontosaurus and killed it, and killed it. And and so they have to figure out a way to get out of there. And they do. They finally figure out how to get out of it, and they save themselves. But the hole itself, like an interdimensional hole, is still there. So they have to mark out on their map that they've been making, and we have seen that throughout the season. They have to make a map and mark, where the dangers are. One thing happens, and it took a little while to get here. In fact, it took 26 episodes to get here, and that was what happens if one of them really gets hurt. I mean, like hurt, sick. Rick got electrocuted, and then Enoch helped them out. But on the everyday, what happens? What plants are safe? What animals are there? I mean, there's so many different ways to die in the land of the lost, and but we never figure out, like, what would they do? Well, how would they handle this? They really don't have any medical supplies. Um, and so when Holly gets sick by a plant, um, that's what they have to do. They have to try to get help to find, like none of the Bucani, to get help, because they've been here for a long time and they know the plants more than the marshals, and so they have to help out Holly. It's Then we find out that it's the equivalent of a 24-hour bug, but still it's a very interesting aspect of the show. It's like, what really does happen if they get really sick? Um, and we really never get a sense of idea of how long they've been there. One of the things they did, and they tried to address a little bit later, is they always had the same clothes. So how long could they have kept their clothes before they started to disintegrate? They're not really. We don't see them ever really making anything. Wesley gets a vest. He makes a vest, but there's never really any of that craft making of creating clothes. And they're growing. Both Will and Holly are growing. They're getting older, so you see the clothes they've had on since the first season, and that that can't really last that much longer. So that was just some of the questions that you're thinking about. Normally, you wouldn't even think about something like that for a kid show, but as we established, this is a pretty good science fiction show, and so these are just questions that will come up when you watch it. Um, then we meet an important figure called the Builder. The Builder is Chaka inwardly wakens the Builder, and he is the person or being that may be the key to the land of the lost. And he goes around and he dictates fates, like, not it's not your time yet, or it's not your time yet. And he goes up to Chaka and he says, "It's your time. It's your time." And we see what that means in the third season. It manifests itself in the third season. Good episode too. Real interesting episode. And now we know that there is a being that is indeed watching from above the land of the lost. No purpose is given yet as to why they're there or how long they'll be there. Um, and the last one, the last show of the season, and that is actually is a rarity, and that is the Blackout. And Enoch actually comes to Rick for help. It seems like the Sleestack have come up with an idea to fool around with the pylons and make it into dark. The Sleestack can't operate in the day. They just can't. They can't be out there in the day. They are lizards, so I guess they'll sunburn. What they want to do is they want to create a total nightfall, so that they can move around outside and find where Will and Holly are. Yeah, and Will, Holly, and Rick, they want to be able to find them at night and have the basically kill them. So Enoch is desperate, and the sleeve stack will spread too. But Enoch is desperate to make sure that doesn't happen, so he goes to Rick for help. Um, Now, I just want to talk a little bit about the cast because this will be actually be the last. This will be the last episode that Spencer Milligan did. Spencer Milligan played Rick Marshall, and what happened was at that time the show was pretty popular, so we started seeing merchandise in the stores, lunch boxes and thermoses and toys and books, figures, basically what we see today for a lot of popular shows. And Spencer Milligan said, okay, well, we should get some of that action too. I'm sure that they did not get paid very much money for doing this show. I'm sure it was done for, I'm sure their pay was probably. I would be shocked if they got more than $1,500 an episode for doing this. I'd be shocked. Um, but there was no residues either, no royalties or anything like that. So Spencer Milligan basically, it wasn't just on him. He wasn't just looking out for himself. He's actually looking out for the two kids. He enjoyed working with Wesley and Kathy Coleman very much, and he was also looking out for their well-being because they were, for every one Rick lunchbox that was probably being sold, Holly and especially Will, their merchandise, or Wesley Ayers or Kathy Collins, they were being sold on a much more grander scale, but they weren't getting any money out of it. So think of the likeness deal that we see in video games. Like you can't put people in video games now that their characters with their faces on it without compensating the people doing it. Um, which is why we don't have. That's why we hadn't had college football for like 6 years or 8 years or 10 years on the PS2 or PS stations. That's that's exactly what it is. Um, so name likeness likeness and one other thing, and but they didn't have that back in 1975. So what they got paid for acting is what they got, plus any public appearances. Um, um, as far as the actors go, we'll cover that for the last one. But Spencer Milligan, he left the show. After the second season, and into the third one, we're going to meet somebody who has ties to a very, very famous franchise who came in to take over Spencer Milligan's role, and it's somebody that many of you might not know about, and it'll be very interesting. And we'll talk about what happens to the rest of the cast after the show ended. There's some interesting stories to share with you there. Um, Real quick, a couple of things too. A couple of things I want to note before I leave you for this one. What I really liked about this, and this is probably not talked about enough, is I love the effects in this in Land of the Lost. The dinosaurs and everything else. Some of it was shot against green screen, yes, but a lot of it was practical. The sets were practical. When you see them in the first season and second season, they're climbing up to high bluff. That's a practical set. They had 3 sets that they worked off of, and they really did. They really built them and they really worked them. Now some of it, obviously was green screen or computer animated. Grumpy, stop motion. I think stop motion, and Grumpy and Big Alice and Dopey. Um, but but for the most part, the effects and even the dinosaurs, for what it was, it was well done. It was well done. You could not complain about what you were watching, and I certainly did, and I thought it was cool as hell. All right, that takes care of season 2 We will be back next Monday to wrap this one up. I hope that you are enjoying it. If you are, please consider dropping us a comment. Let us know if you'd like to see something like this in the future. Again, tell us your favorite Land of the Lost moments. What was your favorite dinosaur? Who was your favorite character? Who's your favorite alien character? Whatever memory you can or you have, drop it down in the comment section, and we'll address it there. All right, thanks for watching. If you're new to the channel, consider hitting the sub, hit the notification bell, let you know whenever I do a video, and we will see you for part 3 of Land of the Lost next Monday. Peace.